Yes.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's better.
All right.
Okay. All right. Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast. I'm Tyler.
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Eli.
And we're back after a very special episode last week on the Birdland Tonight stream. Guys, what did you think about that experience?
I had fun. We had a couple live comments coming in. What was his name? Pine Tar Prophet was hitting us up a little bit, which I remembered it because I like the name. So if you're still listening, shout out to you. I had a good time.
Yeah, and then a certain person you're familiar with, Eli, did help us out with some comments.
My girlfriend chimed in. Appreciated that.
We do
Kiana,
appreciate
love
that.
you.
Boost the numbers. Wow.
Boost
Drop
it.
the L word. Big stuff.
It's been about 4 years, so I mean
that's fair. Okay.
Yeah, not too big.
Jesse, how was your experience?
I mean, it was definitely different. I'm glad that I didn't have to worry about any of the technological components of doing the stream, but I was excited because the intro was pretty cool. And it was just a different platform and format. And it was cool that it was live. I don't know. It felt a little different because it was live. And we knew people were watching. So, like here we have the benefit of editing and, crossing things out and stuff. And, the live thing really amplifies the pressure. So, but in a good way, I think.
Yeah, it was good. And last week, like these past couple episodes prior to last week, I'd been watching my son while doing the podcast, and I had to, those sessions typically took like 45 minutes to an hour longer than they normally do. But your dad pitched in as babysitter last week and helped us out, so that was pretty cool.
Very fortunate, yeah. He hasn't that was the first time he's been around a baby in a long time, so. It was a good experience for him, I think.
Miracle JJ survived the night.
Yeah. No, he did a good job. He got read some Dr. Seuss, and they played with a toy whale and took some pictures, some selfies together. So it was a good experience all around. But yeah, thank you all for kind of sticking with us through a little experiment last week. We're back to normal this week, but do go check out the Birdland Tonight feed at Birdland Sports on all your different social medias. They are going to be doing post-game shows after every regular season game, and we will be involved in that. It's not going to be us every single night. It might not even be every single week, but we are going to try to get on there at least a couple times a month. So yeah, go follow them and give them some support. All right, guys, we are recording this on Tuesday, March 30th, opening day eve. And a lot of roster decisions have been made for the Orioles. There are still some that have not been made as of this recording. So if we release this and it's all out of date, we apologize. We tried to wait as long as possible for Brandon Hyde and Mike Elias to make their final decisions. And it was 8:00. We had to get this recording. So we're kind of going to go in chronological order of things that have happened and get our thoughts on the different news of the day. So the first thing that came down was Matt Harvey, who was a non-roster invitee to spring training, had his contract selected by the Orioles. He was put on the 40-man roster, and he was named the team's number 2 starter in the rotation behind John Means, and he will pitch on Saturday against the Red Sox. So, Eli, I'll go to you first, our resident pitching guru. What were your thoughts, first off on Harvey making the team at all, but also the fact that he is going to be pitching in the number 2 spot for these Orioles this year?
Yeah, I think the first thing that should be said is, there are very few teams in the MLB where you can be a non-roster invitee and just pop in and steal the second slot in the rotation. That being said, I think he was pretty impressive the back half of spring training. I thought he definitely impressed the Orioles. He impressed me. I didn't expect him to come out chucking 96. So, if you asked me this question at the beginning of spring, if I was surprised, yeah, undoubtedly. But asking me now, checks out. Yeah, I think he did everything he needed to do, and I think you're in the spot.
Jesse, similar sentiments?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to look at, but I'm sure there are very few teams that have the number 2 starter be a person who may or may not have even made the team coming into the regular season. So that's a very interesting dynamic. I think that it makes sense in the context of, Zimmerman being the 3 starter and, the guys that follow, that he's the number 2 starter. I think in most rotations at this stage, he'd be a 4 or 5. But the thing is, I think what gave him the edge to be the number 2 starter is just the experience level. And that is what he has above everybody else in that rotation, at least behind him. So,
Yeah, I would agree with you guys. It's just sort of a product of the environment that the Orioles pitching staff is currently in. It's not the prettiest, not the deepest. Well, I don't know. The Orioles have a pretty deep pool of pitching at this point of guys that could pitch in the big leagues, but I don't know. It's not very impressive, I would say. So, given what we've got, I guess he probably is the best option. What I will say is the Ringer put out their power rankings of the teams going into the season, ranking 1 through 30. And the Orioles came in at 29th on that, which isn't too surprising. I'd say maybe 1 or 2 above, but each team gets like 3 or 4 sentences on this is what to expect from this year. The Orioles got 1 sentence, and their 1 sentence is Matt Harvey is Baltimore's number 2 starter. So that kind of gives you a picture of the bleakness of the starting rotation. Also, kind of on that same note, Fangraphs does like position by position previews of the season, and they did rotation, and the Orioles are in 30th. And they're like 2 whole WAR below the 29th team, which is a lot. So, it is what it is. Matt Harvey is, for what it's worth, he had a good spring. He was up to 96, maintained his velocity, looked better at the second half, and we'll see what he can do. What I think is kind of the big question, and I'll kind of pose this to each of you now, is do we think he can maintain a spot in the rotation? Can he avoid injury and poor performance to stick in the rotation all summer long, or like throw 140, 150 innings? Eli, what do you think?
Yeah, I think yes. There's always the chance that we will flip him to some other team for depth or whatever, especially if he's pitching well. That's what's going to happen. But I don't see like starts for extra guys later in the year happening in the way of like this person gets booted out of the rotation and this person comes in. I think it's going to be you slot somebody in here for, to add an extra day. You slot, and maybe even for a longer term, we end up with a 6-man rotation for a good chunk of the year or something to add in Keegan Aiken, towards the end of it, something like that. But I don't think there's any reason, as long as Harvey doesn't get hurt, which
it's a big maybe.
Yeah. He definitely has a history of, but yeah, I think he sticks around.
All right, Jesse, you seem less certain about that.
Yeah, I mean, if I would say it's under 50-50, I think it's more likely that he doesn't make it through the entire season than he does. If I were to know that he were to be healthy, then I would say that it's more likely that he would. But yeah, I mean, just the long history of injury concerns alone, and kind of like you were talking about, the Orioles do have, not very good depth, but they do have some depth at the starting rotation position. And I think with more than just Harvey, we're going to be cycling through a few guys. So I think that there's a very realistic chance he doesn't make it through the year.
Right. I think that, and we're going to get to this in just a second, the absence of Felix Hernandez is a big part of that. The demotion of Keegan Aiken already, there's less bodies around, I think, than I expected. I thought Harvey would have been more like the 4 or 5 guy, but sort of as the spring went on, he's become sort of the cream rising to the crop, and it's some stinky cream. I think he's going to have a shot to stick all season. I think he's going to get a handful of turns through the rotation at the very least. And unless he's like turning in an ERA with like a 6 at the front of it, I think they might just stick with him and say, Matt, you need to absorb 4 or 5 innings every time out. And if it's not a complete, garbage fire, we're just going to keep turning to you. So, I don't think you have to be especially good to make it through this season in the Orioles rotation.
Yeah, I think at this point we definitely need, and, this is, again, he would only be attributed this on an Orioles team, but we need a stabilizing force. And, John Means will probably be, you need multiple stabilizing forces is what I should say. You can't go through the rotation expecting 4 out of 5 guys, with 4 out of 5 guys giving you a chance of going 2 innings and getting blown up, which is the case with a Jorge Lopez, with all the rookies we're going to have in there. And yeah, as stabilizing as Matt Harvey can be, I think he is about as stable as the Orioles can get. And I think they just leave him there, if nothing else, because they don't care about using up innings on his arm, if nothing else, because all these rookies, were not even pitching in competitive ball last year, just at the alternate site. And, Aiken and Kramer up with us, obviously, but even them, just 30 innings or whatever. I think Harvey sticks around.
At a bare minimum, I would say that he's at least going to be treated kind of, I guess, well, in a way. I think he's going to have like an extra day off, or they're going to slot a 6th guy into the rotation at some point in the season, which is going to give him a little more rest. So I think they're going to try to, I don't think they are worried about the number of innings they put on his arm, just because that's just kind of how it goes when you're a veteran pitcher at this point in your career, and the Orioles aren't interested really in Harvey long term. So they are not going to worry about putting too many innings onto him. But I do think they are going to worry about trying to ensure that he does make it through the year. And I think they're going to do that by adding a 6th person to the rotation at some point, maybe doing some spot starts here and there to give Harvey a little extra time off and stuff like that. So I do expect to see stuff like that happen. I don't think he's going to be, going out there every 5 or 6 days the entire season, throwing 6 innings or 7 innings. And then it's not going to be like that. He definitely doesn't have that kind of durability, and I don't think the Orioles are even hoping for that out of him this season. So
yeah, I mean, we'll get into sort of like all the different starting and long relief options the Orioles have, because they do have quite a few. I think this at the top of the rotation is where you see missing somebody like an Alex Cobb. It hurts a little bit. I'm not saying Jahmai Jones isn't worth it. We still have to see that, but not having a guy in the 2 hole Cobb was far from dependable, especially with innings, but at least performance-wise, you could pretty much depend on Cobb to go out there and not be a total disaster most of the time. Harvey, I'm not so sure we're there yet, so we'll see. But I don't see a ton of people challenging Harvey at the top of the rotation. So, we'll see how it goes, and it will be a developing situation, I'm sure. Staying on the pitching front, Wade LeBlanc had an interesting week. He opted out of his minor league deal with the Orioles, then the next day signed a major league deal with the Orioles. It's actually a split contract that he'd get paid a little bit more if he got sent to the minors than he would have on the previous deal. And then obviously he gets a guaranteed major league salary if he's up in the big leagues. But what do you guys think about having Wade LeBlanc around still? Eli has very strong feelings. Eli, should I go to you first on this situation?
Sure. Yeah, he just irritates me. No, I think that, I really don't understand why the Orioles, A, went out and re-signed him in the first place, and then B, after he clearly wasn't it, re-signed him again this spring training. I think that more depth is always good, but you're giving him a 40-man roster spot in signing him to this MLB deal, which as we talked about earlier this year, we had given up. I don't know. Had we given him a deal when the Rule 5 draft came around, or was his minor league deal after that?
I think it was after that.
And it was a minor league deal before, so ignore that.
Yeah. I
was going to complain about Zach Pop, which we'll get into later, but I think that the Orioles are in a situation where, as we were just talking about, they have depth. We don't necessarily have high-level starting pitching, but we have depth. We've got 4 or 5 guys in the minors, and I would much rather see one of them come up and get a shot than just keep toying around with Wade LeBlanc. I really don't get it. I don't get it. That's all I got.
Yeah. Jesse, do you get it?
No, I mean, we've been talking about LeBlanc for weeks and kind of complaining more or less about him. But it's, I mean, kind of like Eli saying, whenever he throws, it's just going to be empty innings, and we're not going to learn anything. We're not going to improve anything. We're not going to build on anything. It's literally just a move to help us survive. That's all, having him around is helping us survive and limp over the finish line of the 2021 Major League season. So, I mean, it speaks to the condition of the current Orioles team, where we are at. Yeah, but it's definitely not exciting, and this is the frustrating part of a rebuild, is having to watch guys like Wade LeBlanc, and I mean, there are a lot of guys like him that rebuilding teams cycle through and that kind of thing. So this is, watching him is going to be the non-exciting, frustrating part of our rebuild.
Yeah, the one quick thing to add real quick, Tyler, sorry.
You're good.
Like, when Felix Hernandez came out and was touching 87 miles an hour, we were all freaking out. Like, Wade LeBlanc, that's just where he operates.
Yeah.
It's like, you see him in the regular season last year. Like, I mean, if he touches 88, it's a good day, legit. And, he just, like, flips in off-speed pitches, and that's fine and dandy. It's like, you could say Cesar Valdez does the same thing, except Cesar Valdez does it well. And I mean, there's just, like, kind of like Jesse was saying, I mean, there's really, like, no directionality to a Wade LeBlanc signing.
I mean, what I will say about LeBlanc, the difference between LeBlanc and Hernandez is Hernandez made his money early in his career as a dude with big time velocity. Plus, he could do everything else well. LeBlanc has never had big time velocity, so he kind of knows how to work with a more limited arsenal. But I was kind of working through this. I was on the Warehouse Pod Twitter earlier today and tweeting out. I basically tweeted out because we were texting all back and forth about it before we recorded, and I just tweeted out about how we're kind of coming back to the idea of why on earth are they even considering keeping LeBlanc around. And Matt Kremnitzer got back to me. If you guys are Orioles fans, Matt Kremnitzer on Twitter. He writes for PressBox. And he said there are going to be a lot of short starts, but yeah, they are going to rotate arms and make changes. Things could be very different in even a few weeks. And I think that that's fair. I think a lot of it, and I said this on Twitter too, I think a lot of it depends on what happens with these Rule 5 guys, because I think having LeBlanc and these two Rule 5 guys are all in a similar situation. They are locked on the 26-man roster because you can't option them. So the Orioles need one of them at least to kind of come forward and say, like, I can be the dude you can count on 2 times a week to give you 2 or 3 innings after the starter only gets through the order one time. Maybe LeBlanc's that guy. Maybe Wells is that guy. Maybe Scruller's that guy. Maybe none of them are that guy. But I think the Orioles know they need at least one of them, maybe 2 of them. So let's see what he can do. I mean, I think we already know what he can do. We saw him put up an 8 ERA last year. Like, that's not a 5 ERA where you have some good outings. Like, an 8 is an 8. I mean, it's bad. So I probably wouldn't have kept him around. And we still don't know if he's going to be kept around. The deal is a major league deal, but the Orioles could cut him. It's not like they gave him $20 million. They gave him, I think it was like $700,000 or something like that.
If he makes the MLB team. Yeah.
If he makes the MLB team. So it's not a huge deal. And they could, we were saying before, I think he's a perfect player to have at the alternate site because you could bring him up eventually. Also this year, there's going to be 5-man traveling squads. He's another one that could make sense there because bring him over if there is the need for it on a road trip or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm in the same ballpark with you guys. I'm not really excited to watch him pitch, but I can understand the utility of having a Wade LeBlanc in the organization. Okay. Anything else to add on Wade LeBlanc before we move on to another player we're excited to talk about? Oh, go ahead.
Last thing. I'm going to keep harping on it. You say like the usefulness of having somebody like him in the organization. And I agree with that, but what I don't understand is why they're so insistent on that super minor role.
Yeah.
Like, they keep coming back to him. And that's what doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
We have people that can fill that role quite easily, and maybe more, not maybe, definitely more effectively. Like, I would rather trust Adam Plutko, the guy we just got. We'll talk about that. I'd rather trust Plutko. I'd rather trust Bauman. I'd rather trust Lothar, Wells, anybody and everybody over LeBlanc. So I just don't understand why we keep, re-upping on him.
You could probably find a 5 ERA guy that is comparable, that would be financially comparable to LeBlanc. I mean,
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is about like the Ballmans and the Lothars and stuff. Maybe there's something to, maybe there's still some development there, or there's something to be said about not wanting to put them into bottom feeder type games, which is like, I mean, I wouldn't expect LeBlanc to be pitching many high leverage innings. I expect him to come in the third or fourth or fifth inning of games that are out of hand or early enough that they're not high leverage yet. And he's going to hopefully do a job for you. But maybe you want to get your young guys you hope will become more than that into more important situations, and also develop them a little more at Bowie or Norfolk or something like that. We'll see. Keeping the good vibes going, let's talk some Chris Davis. The long-awaited move has happened. Davis has been placed on the 60-day injured list with a back injury that has been shrouded in mystery for most of the spring. He hasn't played since February, and I haven't seen anything of him other than he was in a video with Trey Mancini when they were like miking up Trey Mancini weeks ago. But I think that footage was from February. So I haven't seen anything from Chris Davis in a while. So I've kind of come to think about when we see him in an Orioles uniform again. So Jesse, maybe I'll go to you first. Do you think we will see Chris Davis A, play a game this season for the Orioles, or B, I guess answer both these questions, and B, ever play a game again for the Orioles?
I would say no to both. Yeah. I mean, at this point, I think he's just, it's over, and the Orioles are moving forward. They're, trying to make progress with the organization, with the team. And at this point, having Davis just doesn't serve any purpose. So I don't think we'll ever see him again this year or ever.
Wow, that's a big take. I think that's a big statement. Eli, are you prepared to make that same statement?
I agree with everything Jesse said, except I think we'll see Chris Davis again. I think that the Orioles have been trying to move forward. The Orioles have been, Davis has been terrible, all the above, everything Jesse said. But, he's clearly incredibly dedicated to having this be his life and getting everything out of it that he can. He submitted himself to just years and years of torture, and all the respect in the world to him, because this must be brutal for him. But I think he keeps coming, and I think he makes his way back onto the field for sure.
I think so too. I think it's possible we don't see him this year, just because this back injury it's very strange that we've heard nothing about it. There's no talk of like he's seen all these doctors or what. I mean, there's been a little bit of chatter about that, but we've really not heard much information about it. So I think that maybe he's out this year because it could be some kind of lingering thing. But I think that next year we're going to start hearing the stories in December, January of like Davis is getting into shape and he's going to be down in spring in Sarasota. And, maybe we don't see him in a regular season game again, but I think he's going to be back at Ed Smith Stadium next year and trying to do something.
Just to be clear, I was referring to regular season games. Yeah.
That's fair. I'll still say, yeah, we see him again. I'll just put it out there.
This year or next?
Yeah. I think maybe not this year, but next year we will see him again.
He's going to have been a year more out of baseball at that
How much
point.
worse could he be?
Right. I mean,
at this point, it can't hurt.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I don't know if we talked about it last year or last week, or if we've just talked about it off mic. I can't remember, but I know the CBA is getting renegotiated after this season, and that could have something to do with it. Once the CBA is renegotiated, maybe the Orioles have some path forward about cutting Davis or something. I'm not sure. So maybe, Jesse, maybe I am kind of leaning towards what you're saying now is about just never seeing him again.
Or maybe there's a strike next year. They don't play the next season, and the Orioles just skip out on his salary.
That's what I think the Orioles secretly hope is going to happen. But that would be very bad for the overall development of the Orioles players. So I sure hope it. Although I guess you could still keep developing minor league players if they're not on the 40-man roster. The Orioles are not adding Adley Rutschman to the 40-man roster this year. Heard it here first, folks.
God.
All right, let's go back to some guys that actually are playing baseball right now. In kind of a shock move. Well, these aren't all shock moves, but the Orioles optioned a couple more players to Norfolk, including Jahmai Jones, who we talked about earlier. They got from the Angels in the Cobb deal. Richie Martin, who had been dealing with a wrist injury all spring. And then the big shocker was Keegan Aiken, who most of the winter was anticipated as being one of the Orioles' 3 starters that were penciled into the rotation behind Means and Kramer. Keegan Aiken was optioned as well, and it sounds like he's going to start the year at the alternate site and then potentially move to Norfolk once the AAA season begins. So, were you guys as shocked as I was when I saw that Aiken was being demoted to the minor leagues? Eli, do you want to kind of kick us off there?
Yeah, I was shocked. And I will say at first I was like pretty irritated. I was pretty angry with the Orioles. I was like, the guy has shown enough. He can pitch in the big leagues and just give him a job out of spring. I know he struggled a little bit, but yeah. And then, the more that I thought about it, ultimately it is the right move. He was struggling in camp. That's pretty hard to argue with. He is pretty young, and you just send him down, you let him figure it out for a month, and you bring him right back up. He's got option years, and I don't think that the Orioles are planning to use any option years with him after this year. They're expecting him to develop into a big league pitcher or not by the end of this year, which is fair. Yeah. He's reaching the peak of his development, and yeah, send him down, let him figure it out for a month, and then bring him up, as long as Wade LeBlanc doesn't get in his way.
That's fair. He'll be 26 on opening day. So, still young enough for there to be some upside there. Jesse, right. Thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of am in agreement with Eli to at least to some extent. I mean, I think that, maybe at this point they don't want to enforce an entire year onto him. I can't imagine that it really has much to do with the spring training numbers, just because, for one, it was mainly one really bad, disastrous outing that he had that really messed up a lot of his numbers, where he gave up six earned runs. So, taking that out, his numbers are not great, but they're not terrible. So I really don't think that the decision has much to do with his spring training performance. Like Eli said, he's proven that he can pitch at a major league level, at least in some sort of capacity. So it is kind of frustrating. Maybe the idea is he stays down a month and then he comes up and stays the rest of the year. And if that is the situation, I don't think it's very consequential one way or the other. It's just a little annoying as an Orioles fan. And the Orioles might have thought, hey, maybe it's good if he has a month down in the minors. It's better that we do it early, and then he comes up and stays on the team and has some sort of consistency, rather than going down and then coming back up at some point mid-season. So I feel like that's kind of the calculation that the Orioles are making. It's, like I said, it's annoying as a fan to not be able to watch him immediately, but I'm not that angry at the decision. And in the long run, I don't think it's going to make a big deal one way or the other.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. They did kind of yo-yo him last year a little bit. He came up before Kramer and then went down for a bit when Kramer was up, and then came back up later in the year. And, I don't know, I've not read any studies about it or anything, but there may be something to say that sort of treatment of a pitcher is not super beneficial. The Orioles pitching situation is going to be volatile for this first month. I think they're going to be sorting out roles, figuring out what's going on. The Rule 5 guys, they might be total disasters. We don't know. And maybe they feel Aiken would be better served to start every day. It sounds like the alternate camps are going to play other alternate camps this year. I read that the Nationals and the Orioles alternate camps are going to be playing actual games against one another, which is a different setup from last year where you were just playing against each other and there were coaches in the outfield and all that stuff. So, he can get some real game-like situations at the alternate camp that are a little more, you know, regulated and can make him comfortable and he can work on some really specific things versus being thrown into the fire a little bit. They may just feel that Kramer is better prepared for that versus Aiken. I'm not sure. I'm not involved in those conversations, obviously, but I'm not super excited about it. I would have liked to have seen Aiken. I want to see our best players, our most players with the most potential in the big leagues as much as possible. But if the Orioles feel this is better for his development, I'm totally fine. What I don't think it's any sort of like, it's obviously not any like service time manipulation or any of that stuff because they already started his clock last year. It's nothing nefarious like that. So it's got to be, to me, just what they think is best for his development. And I'll just trust the Orioles for now on that.
I think there's something to be said too for, when somebody comes up, if he were to just get battered for the first month while he figured out something, whatever mechanical tick he felt like was wrong in spring training or the Orioles felt like was wrong, that just hurts his confidence, just as much as I think being on that yo-yo, getting sent down and up, as Jesse and you were saying. So yeah, there's no reason to put him in a position where he's not going to perform just to keep him on the big league roster at this point.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say, Tyler, you made a comment last week about the Orioles trying to always waiting until the last possible moment to make a decision on guys. And I think that also factors into the equation here because they can send him down, they can send him to the minors and there's not really any big consequences. Whereas one of the guys he would have replaced, maybe LeBlanc, maybe one of the Rule 5 guys would not have made the roster if he did. Those are permanent decisions. And the Keegan-Agan decision is not a permanent one. So I feel like that's also very possibly factoring into the equation here.
Yeah, I think that's valid for sure. And the Orioles are going to need as many arms as possible. So if this is the option that gives them the best potential to keep serviceable arms around, I can understand it from that perspective too, because I mean, we'll talk about the Rule 5 guys here in a second, but yeah, I think your point makes a lot of sense, Jess. All right, sticking on the mound for a little bit, the Orioles did make a trade, and not a sweep it under the rug kind of trade. They added Adam Plutko from the Cleveland baseball team in exchange for cash. Plutko has started in the past, only pitched 1 or 2 inning outings this spring, and Mike Elias did say that he is going to start the season in the Orioles bullpen, but he could start down the line. Jesse, do you have any big thoughts on Adam Plutko and the sort of role that he is going to have on the 2021 Orioles? Are you excited about this addition?
I wouldn't say I'm excited exactly. I think it's a move that makes some sense. I think he's an upgrade over Wade LeBlanc, and I think they're going to fill
everything comes back to Wade LeBlanc.
Right. I think they're going to fill somewhat similar roles on the team. But yeah, I mean, if nothing else, it's some fresh blood. He is younger, which also has a little bit of benefit.
He's like 30, isn't he?
No,
29.
He's younger than LeBlanc is what I was talking about. So, so yeah,
low standards.
I know he's not younger than probably the average Major League Baseball player. But what I would say is that, I mean, I think there is some benefit to having someone like him, like on the roster. And if he does really well, he is a possible trade candidate, even though I wouldn't say that's at all likely.
No,
at least for not anything significant. I mean, I'm definitely not mad at the decision. He also has some sort of flexibility in what his role can be. So I think that also gives him some upside and some benefit to the Orioles. But I think that's mainly it.
Okay. Eli, when we were texting about it, you seemed, I don't know, not amped about the trade, but you were kind of like, oh, Adam Plutko. So what are
Yeah.
you thinking about the Plutko move?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, we only gave up cash considerations for him, and Cleveland was aware that he wasn't going to make their starting rotation or their bullpen, and he's out of options, so they were going to pass him through waivers, and this was kind of inevitable. So we just jumped the gun and said, all right, we'll give you some cash for him. So we didn't give up much. We got an arm who the Cleveland pipeline right now is pretty elite, pumping out Shane Biebers, Trevor Bauers, Zach Plesac's, Mike Clevenger's. Yeah. So their pitching pipeline is good. And there were a couple of things. I was checking out his Baseball Savant page. He's 70th percentile in hard hit rate, 81st in walk rate, 93rd percentile in curveball spin rate. He throws an absolute hammer. The rest of the page is not very friendly to him. Don't get me wrong. But, it's a couple things that low walks, they don't hit the ball hard off of him. And he's got 1++ pitch. So you kind of look at it and you say, okay, the Orioles could potentially build off of something. We know what we're getting with him because, as we said, he's 29. He's going to be able to go out there and eat some innings. He has been stretched out in the past. And yeah, I think he's just going to have a bulk role in the pen, and I'm pretty happy with that.
I was just going to say, I also feel like it was a pretty, a pretty savvy move on the Orioles' part, recognizing that he wasn't going to make the Cleveland team. Cleveland just had to dump him somewhere, basically, to get anything for him. So the Orioles kind of took advantage of an opportunity and got this guy for pretty cheap, relatively. So
I was listening to the Locked On Orioles podcast, had a gentleman on. I'm not sure of his name. I apologize, but he's on the Locked On Cleveland podcast. And they were talking about Plutko. And they said that what kind of stands out about him apparently is he's a big time leader on the Cleveland team for a couple years, which, the Orioles are a team that is, and I don't know if this factored in the Orioles' decision to get him. I'm sure it's much more about the play on the field than the intangibles at this point, but it doesn't hurt to have a guy who's a little bit older. He's not quite 30, been around the game, been on some really good Cleveland teams, been with a good bunch of pitchers, come up through a good system to kind of guide some of these younger guys. He's started, he's been in the bullpen. He's kind of had all these different roles for a team. And, all the while been a solid major league pitcher. Definitely not going to wow you. He's a soft tosser, got a ton of spin on that curveball. He doesn't do anything. He's not going to, lead the league in anything, but he can stick around in the big leagues and do a job for you and pitch some middle innings and not be a total embarrassment out there. So yeah, I think savvy is the right word for it, Jesse. It's a nice little move to get a good piece. And, we'll see. I'm excited about it. It's not, not the biggest deal, but a nice little move from Mike Elias and the front office.
We can also be confident that he'll stick around and he will be with us, barring a trade, which, like I said, I think is unlikely. He'll be with us the entire year. So that's nice to have that reliability, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, the Orioles,
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say the Orioles did trade away a couple of relief pieces last year with Givens and Castro. They've replenished pretty well, but now Harvey's out for 2 months. It's not a bad idea to add a couple or add a guy that can be depended on in the pen.
My only note, and it was just kind of a funny one, Orioles fans will appreciate this. On Baseball Savant, they give a list of similar pitchers based on movement, velocity. Asher Wojciechowski is a pretty good comp for Adam Plutko, and we all know how much we loved Wojo.
Yeah, now I'm much less excited about it.
Yeah, that's fair.
But Wojciechowski, they had him starting games. I'm hoping Plutko's not starting very often. If he is, it's a spot start, which is fine.
Right. And, Wojo did have a good breaking ball. He was able to rack up strikeouts okay. So maybe Plutko's stuff will play up out of the pen a little bit and we can get something serviceable for him.
Yeah. One time through the order at the very most, I think is reasonable. All right. So the Plutko move was not without a coordinating move to free up space on the 40-man roster. The Orioles had to DFA infielder and presumed starter at second base, Yolmer Sanchez, who has since cleared waivers and is now a free agent, currently looking for a job. But I was a little surprised by the Yolmer Sanchez move, but Jesse in our text chain said he thought Sanchez might not make the team. So Jesse, you want to, maybe take us through your thought process there and what your reaction was to Sanchez getting the DFA?
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, it's just the hitting. It's so bad.
It's not great,
and, right? And that's the big. I mean, it's an obvious problem with having him on the team, and I guess the Orioles just felt like, I mean, this is too unbearable, and I guess he's probably gonna, the Mendoza line is that bar for a really good infielder. So yeah, I mean, I just think that, I think the calculation was real simple, that the Orioles couldn't withstand putting him in the lineup every day and having him in the lineup. Yeah. So right. And the one disappointing thing about it is his glove is so good, and it really would have been nice to have him playing second base behind the pitching staff. So that's unfortunate. But I wasn't terribly surprised, just because the hitting is just a bit his big Achilles heel.
Eli, you were surprised. You were kind of more with me, where you were pretty shocked about the move. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I definitely was confused, and I think I think it's partially my fault, and this is like going, larger scale here. But I like to think that there's some directionality at all times to what the Orioles are doing, and the fact of the matter is that in this rebuild where we are, with somebody who is, has played in the MLB for a couple years, anybody that we sign at that level, I mean, it's just like throwing dartboards. We're going to throw the entire board.
Makes
at the
no
wall.
sense.
No, we're going to throw, it's throwing darts, and it's throwing them blindfolded, and you hope you land on something. And if not, you figure out something else. And I think that was much more where the Orioles were. Something that I actually was not aware of until I had seen this DFA is that arbitration salaries are not guaranteed until they actually make the roster. And so we agreed to this ARB deal with him, and because he did not make the roster, we only have to pay out a quarter of it, which I wasn't aware of before. But the Orioles clearly were like, okay, this isn't a $1 million deal to sign this guy. This is a $250,000 deal. And then we get to make the decision on whether we want him. And then it becomes a $750,000 decision on whether we want him in the lineup, And that kind of changed it for me, because I thought we were throwing $1 million down the tube because we had signed him to a guaranteed deal. Turns out we did not. So yeah, I mean, like Jesse said, the bat is just atrocious. You just see these fastballs down the middle getting popped up to the second baseman. And it's just, it was hard to watch. And, we got Orias and Valleca on the roster, and we can plug and play as needed. And I think we'll be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we shouldn't be, in hindsight, hindsight's 2020 always, but I guess we shouldn't be all that surprised. I mean, the guy won a Gold Glove, in 2019, was it?
19, yep.
And then what?
And then then he was non-tendered.
Then he was non-tendered, and then the Giants signed him last year, released him. The White Sox got him back, and then we're like, actually, we're going to DFA you, and then the Orioles got him. So it's like, while the glove is really good, there clearly is something about, second baseman where there's enough good defenders out there, I guess, that the bat needs to be a little bit more up to snuff. And he's got a career OBS plus, I think, of 80, which is, 20% below average. And it's not what you want. So the Orioles clearly are going to prioritize. It looks like they're going to prioritize offense over defense at second base, because they're going to go with Valleca and Urias at second, which that's sort of where I'm left a little bit scratching my head, because my whole thought was the Orioles want to nurture the pitching staff, and to do that, you want to improve the defense. And, Sanchez has his issues, but he's definitely a significant step above Valleca and Urias with the glove. So I don't know. How do you balance those things? Do you think, Jesse, that the offense that you get with Urias and Valleca is worth the downgrade in the defense that Sanchez would have provided? Is that worth $750,000, as Eli just said?
I mean, it's a really good question. I mean, I just think that, the question just isn't about even like a comparison. It's just literally about the $750,000 and the bat, and whether the Orioles can. I think it's just a question of whether the Orioles could realistically and legitimately put somebody in the lineup who is going to hit as badly as he is in the lineup every day. And the Orioles figured that they wouldn't be able to do that. And if he doesn't play every day and he's not in the lineup every day and he's just like a defensive replacement, well, I mean, his defensive capacity and the benefits that his defense brings obviously dramatically decreases. And at that point, for a utility infielder, it's just not worth it. So I don't know exactly how to answer your question. I mean, I'm not worried about the financial stuff exactly. The $750,000 to me doesn't mean anything for this Orioles organization. Even though it's something that Elias is clearly considering. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I got you. I mean, Eli, do you have any sort of thoughts on like the balance between offense and defense at the second base position? This isn't shortstop. This isn't catcher. Right. This isn't center field. Right. Second base is a tier below those guys.
That was the biggest thing to me. I mean, not to take away from what you were saying, because, we had this discussion on the podcast before, like solidifying the up the middle defense for all these young pitchers is the best thing the Orioles could have done. We were applauding the decision of having Galvis and Sanchez up the middle. And it's not the way they're going, which it was surprising, but I think that, Valleca has shown he's adequate everywhere. We haven't seen Orias as much, but I do have confidence that it will be passable, and extra run support is also very, very good for a pitcher's confidence. So I'm not mad at it.
That's fair. Yeah. If the Orioles can score an extra, half a run a game because they have Valleca and Urias at second instead of Sanchez, then that probably is worth it.
Right.
Okay. Let's move on to sadder news. Felix Hernandez is no longer a member of the Baltimore Orioles. He hasn't pitched since March 16th with some right elbow discomfort, which at the time Jesse told us might not be a big deal, guys. Don't worry about it. He hasn't pitched since then and has now opted out of his minor league contract and is a free agent. Eli, were you surprised by this development? And do you think that Felix Hernandez's MLB career may be at an end?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised. But the one thing that everybody always says about Felix, and we brought it up on this podcast before, is that he's just the ultimate competitor. And I think truly the only thing in his mind is, where can I play MLB baseball? And, the Orioles were looking at him as somebody who could, stabilize partially, and probably he would get booted towards the end of the year for one of these extra young guys. And I think that he saw the willingness to not bring him on as an indication that, he probably is not the focus of this team right now. And, he won't find a team where he is the focus, but anywhere that he can find a starting job, I think he's going to latch on. And I think that's really the thing that matters most to him, is just playing MLB baseball. So I think it makes sense. I think his career is not over just because he does have that drive, kind of like Chris Davis. I think he's stubborn enough to just stick around until somebody will take him. And I think somebody will at some point when he's healed up.
Okay, interesting. Jesse, you disagree?
Yeah, No, I don't disagree. I was just going to say I think his career is dependent on his ability to recover from this injury. And I think that's really all it is. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a thing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If
Sorry.
for as far as the Orioles are concerned, I mean, the Orioles are one of the worst teams in baseball.
Yeah.
And if you can't pitch here, then it's going to be tough. But the consideration did account for his injury. So
Right.
that's some context for it, at least.
Right. Yeah. I mean, your point is a good one about the Orioles are a bad team. And of all the weaknesses on the team, the starting rotation is, I think, by far the biggest weakness. And he can't cut it there. You know, I'm not so sure. I mean, the thing is, like, he could have gone on the IL, but the Orioles would have needed to add him to the 40-man roster and then move him to the IL. Even if it's a 60-man IL, you got to get him on the 40-man before you put him on the IL. You'd have to get rid of somebody to make that happen. I don't think the Orioles are willing to make that happen. And I don't know how long he needs on the shelf. He might just need a couple weeks and then he's back out there. But, you know, we're going on. He didn't pitch last year. He opted out of the season due to COVID. He pitched in 2019, wasn't particularly successful, struggled this spring, had lower velocity than even the previous years when his velocity was already down. I'm not so sure what else is left in the tank at this point. You know, it's easy enough to get a spring invite, especially when you're a guy with a storied decade plus in the league. I'm not so sure where you go from here because the Orioles need starting pitching as bad as anybody in the league. And even if there is an injury somewhere, I don't think you're going to Felix Hernandez, especially if you have playoff aspirations. I think you might try to make a trade. You might look at your high minors and find a pitchability guy like a Bruce Zimmerman in another organization and maybe go to him over Felix Hernandez. So it pains me to say, but I think Felix Hernandez's career may be over. We heard about Chris Tillman coming back year after year, getting tryouts, and then where's he been? He's been gone for 5 years, I think. So could be something similar with Hernandez.
Discount the Pittsburgh Pirates.
They're pretty terrible too. Right. That's very true.
My roommate's a big Pirates fan. I can attest their rotation may be in a worse state than ours. Like really? Genuinely, yeah. There are probably 3 guys who could be considered as starting pitchers. We considered 8. None of them were necessarily MLB starters, but we considered more. They have about 3 in consideration. So.
Wow. We're not big Chad Kuhl believers over here.
Chad Kuhl is one of the 3.
Yeah, I don't think I could name any other Pirates pitchers.
I'll look up their depth chart. Stand here for 1 second. We'll enjoy this.
Yeah, well, while you pretend to do that, let's talk Orioles pitchers still. This is kind of the last big roster move, and then we'll speed up the pace here a little bit. The Orioles announced that both Rule 5 picks, or I guess the Orioles didn't announce, but Brandon Hyde told reporters that both Rule 5 picks, Max Skruller and Tyler Wells, are going to make the opening day roster, which is a surprising development. Wells had a pretty good spring. Skruller also had a fairly good spring, except for one outing that was a disaster. So both of them have pitched fairly well, but against less than major league level competition. So Eli, maybe I'll go to you first with your thoughts on this. Are you surprised that, I guess, first of all, any Rule 5 picks made the team, and second, that both of them have made the team?
So I expected one. And now that they're both on, it's made me kind of stop and think. And going back to the dartboard methodology that we were talking about before, I think this is another chance for the Orioles to keep throwing some darts and hope they land on a bullseye. We've got guys with options. We are not necessarily locking ourselves into anything. It's still super cheap to offer them back. We lose, I think, $50,000 if we offer them back and they're accepted by the other team. So
I thought we got 50,000 back if they're accepted from the other team. Do I have that wrong?
No, we pay 20
to get them at first. No,
right.
No.
I thought it was
we pay $100,000 to get them in the draft, and then we have to offer them back for 50. So if we offer them back in the end, we only lose 50,000.
Oh, okay. I got what you're saying. We're saying the same thing, yeah. I think. Okay, gotcha.
We are.
All right. Sorry. Continue.
We're good.
Throwing darts at a dartboard. Continue. Yep.
Right. So yeah, this is throwing darts. That's all it is. I think they did look pretty solid most of the way through spring. I don't think they faced, MLB caliber lineups, but it is what it is. The Orioles clearly like them, so why not explore it a little more?
Okay. Jesse, your thoughts on the Rule 5 guys?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like Eli's describing. The Orioles are just casting a wide net and hoping for some sort of diamond in the rough, and that's what the situation is.
Yeah, I know that I had read prior to the Rule 5 draft a couple of pieces about like, here's guys you could expect to go in the Rule 5 draft. And I don't remember seeing either of their names on those lists. I think Scruller was a particular surprise at the time. But at this point, let's see what they got. They both performed fairly well in the spring. Like I kind of said earlier with the LeBlanc stuff, I think LeBlanc, Scruller, Wells, they need at least one of those guys, maybe two of them, to become like multi-inning reliable, 2 to 3 innings, twice a week type guys. What I'm not so sure about is both of them making it through the entire season. This isn't the first time we've seen 2 Rule 5 picks make the Orioles opening day order or opening day roster. A couple years ago, it was Richie Martin and Drew Jackson both made the roster. Jackson, I think, made it 3 games into the season before he was sent back to the Dodgers. We could have a similar situation here. So, Jesse, maybe I'll go back to you real quick on this. Do you think that both of them make it through the season? One of them, none of them? And if you think one of them, which one do you think makes it through?
Yeah, I think neither of them will make it through the entire season, and the competition that they've faced is just so not comparable to Major League Baseball that I just think, I just don't think they're gonna perform. And at least by the end of the season, I think they'll be returned.
Okay. Eli, do you kind of on the same page there?
I actually am not at all. I think there's a 60% chance that both of them make it. I think at least one makes it through the year. We've talked about like the Orioles value flexibility. We've seen them take a hit in the way of Richie Martin, seen them take a hit for the full year. And like we've been talking about, we've got a bunch of guys who can pitch good chunks of innings at a time. And having somebody like an Adam Plutko in the bullpen will make it easier to keep both of those guys around. Plutko can go out, deliver 3 innings, have one of these guys just scramble their way through 3 outs, and then get to the regular part of the bullpen or something like that. I think that we have the flexibility to make it happen. And so I think we're going to, just purely as a result of that. Not completely regardless of their performance, but I think the Orioles will do what they can to make it work.
Okay, interesting. Well, I'll probably split the difference then and say one of them, because that is actually what I think. I think one of them will make it through. I think having 2 Rule 5 picks at the same position is very difficult. Now it's, obviously pitchers are different than, position players, but it's very difficult, I think, to make 2 relief pitchers make it through the whole season. I remember, now the Orioles were trying to compete at the time, but when they had Jason Garcia a couple of years ago, that was like a nightmare. He would make a rare appearance, and it always felt like it was on a Sunday game in like the 4th inning when they were getting blown out. And that was like just a nightmare. And like I said, the Orioles were trying to win, so it was a more glaring issue. But I think that I'll pick Tyler Wells to make it through. His name's Tyler, which is cool. And he's a big dude, big 6'8" guy, creates angles. I'm not entirely sure what his whole repertoire is, but he had really good numbers this spring. Again, to Jesse's point, not against Major League caliber, but I'll pick him to make it through the whole season. And we should say, like, these guys don't necessarily need to, quote unquote, make it through the whole season. You can do some funky stuff with injury lists. That's how Anthony Santander made it through years ago. He played like 20 games the first year and spent most of the year on the injured list. So things can happen where they might not meet the Rule 5 qualifications this year. But, if we're trying to make it simple to understand, they got to get through this year on the 26-man roster.
It is also worth noting that it is a little different this year than in years past, just because there are 26 people on the roster. So it does stay a little more easier to keep a Rule 5 guy, but not a whole lot easier, but a little easier.
Yeah, and
there's no limit on the number of pitchers also.
Right. That's true. And the 5-man taxi squad, not that you can't move one of the Rule 5 guys onto the taxi squad, but it does give the Orioles pitching flexibility on the road that they could bring optionable guys on that 5-man taxi squad and kind of swap some things out. I'm not sure how long. I guess a player has to stay down for 10 days after they're demoted, so you'd use a guy, you'd burn a guy there, but still it does give more flexibility this season. And now I believe they're going to have 26-man rosters moving forward forever. But the 5-man taxi squad, I think, is a COVID thing. So don't expect that to stick around forever. All right. Let's move on to that's kind of all the roster moves so far. Like I said, we're recording this on Tuesday. We still are waiting on decisions on DJ Stewart. We don't know what's going on there. He's got a hammy issue. The back of the bullpen. Do we want to talk about the back of the bullpen real quick? Because that's we're not really getting another spot to talk about it. It sounds like they're going to have 2 spots left that we don't know if Wade LeBlanc's going to make it yet. Travis Lakins is kind of, up and down. Dylan Tate, and then who was the last guy?
Cole Sulser.
So
yeah,
if those are the last 2 spots in the bullpen, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but do we have guys we think are going to make it and also guys maybe we prefer are going to make it? Eli, I feel like you're not going to have LeBlanc on the preferred list.
Nope.
Maybe are there 2 guys that you think are going to make the squad?
Yeah, I think that. I think LeBlanc will make it. I hate to say it. Yeah, I think he ends up in the bullpen, and then I think I don't know. I've gone back and forth. I think Dylan Tate makes it just because of how well he showed out last year. But my preference would be for Connor Green to find his way on. They still haven't officially said anything about him. He's not on the 40-man. I don't know who we get rid of on the 40-man, but I just like his
Wade
stuff.
LeBlanc.
Well, yeah. Yeah. If they're willing to do that, please. I'll sign up for it.
All right. So in Eli's perfect world, it would be Connor Green and Dylan Tate, and you would take Wade LeBlanc off the 40-man for Connor Green. Although Connor Green has an option left, I believe, so they could option him. But okay. But realistically, you think it's going to be LeBlanc and Tate that make
I do.
All right. Jesse, do you have the same thought, I think, right?
Yeah, I agree with LeBlanc and Tate. I think I was saying this on our texting thing, but I think Tate is a lock. I think he just has so much upside. And I think the Orioles are excited to have him on the roster. So I think he'll make it for sure. And then LeBlanc, just kind of out of convenience more than anything else, I think he'll make the team too. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I've kind of gone up and down on this. I feel like why haven't they, if LeBlanc, we're all kind of saying is so obvious, why haven't they said something about it? Why haven't they released the 25 or 26-man roster yet? It's very strange. So I don't know. I'll be different. I'll say Tate and Lakins make it. And then LeBlanc doesn't. And then I think maybe they try to do something where they sneak Green onto the 40-man, but then option him because Green's got really good numbers this spring. We were looking right before we got on, but he's faced like the 4th worst opponent quality this spring. So maybe the Orioles feel like he's not ready. But if Elias is all about accumulating talent, Green is certainly more talented than Wade LeBlanc. So we'll go with that.
So real quick, interestingly enough, I just pulled up the Orioles depth chart and they have Tanner Scott. Oh, they don't have the Rule 5 guys on here. Ignore me.
You thought you found something. We had a scoop.
Well, no, I thought I did. Depth chart is just out of date.
Okay.
Because they don't have the Rule 5 guys on there. So this is not reflective of the 26-man roster.
All right. We thought we had something.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay, moving on. Anthony Santander, who we do believe is going to be on the 26-man roster. He was the most valuable Oriole a year ago. Has not played since the 23rd of March. He's been battling a minor, quote-unquote, minor oblique injury. And Brandon Hyde has said that he is playing on the backfields, taking swings and so forth, but not playing in Grapefruit League games. So, an oblique injury is what caused him to miss the end of the 2020 season. Are you at all concerned about this quote-unquote minor oblique injury? Keep in mind that Hunter Harvey is out for 2 months with a oblique injury. So, Eli, maybe I'll go to you first. Are you at all concerned about Anthony Santander and his oblique?
Yeah, there are 2 sides to it. A couple pros, couple cons. The cons are obliques are notoriously tricky, and because of that, I am worried. That being said, the fact that we just had Hunter Harvey go down and they were open about this is him hitting the 60-day, and Hyde has been extremely lax about it. He's like, oh yeah, he's swinging on the backfield. He'll be there opening day. That makes me feel better. And overall, I think he'll be with us on opening day.
Okay, Jesse.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too worried about it. I think, there's no real reason for alarm yet, at least in my mind. So I'm not hitting the panic button.
Yeah, I mean, I think what this could do is it could make Santander the DH for a little bit to start the season. And you could see Austin Hayes out in right field, Cedric Mullins in center, Mountcastle in left, which isn't the worst outcome. But the fact that they say he's taking swings, I think he'll be in the lineup, but we just might not see him in the field as much as we normally would. Other news, the Royals have selected the contract of minor league invitee Hanser Alberto, so he will not be coming back and playing second base now that Yolmer Sanchez is gone. Jesse, are you excited for Hanser?
Yeah, good for him. It's cool. I think it makes sense on some team somewhere. I think he fits in and can be a major league player in some capacity, at least. So I think it's good.
Cool. Eli, are you excited for Hanser Alberto?
I'm excited for him. I think, he's a fun guy. I think the MLB is better off when he's in it. And yeah, happy for him.
Yeah, he's a guy that can clearly handle some major league pitching, just doesn't have a bunch of pop and doesn't get on base very much. But I think he deserves to be on a major league roster. So congrats, Hanser. Hopefully you don't hit well against the Orioles, but you hit well in all your other games.
Agreed.
Staying at second base, Rougned Odor, former knockout champion against Jose Batista, has been designated for assignment by the Rangers. The guy has a big contract. I think he's still owed like $25 million by the Rangers. What do you think about Odor as an option for the second base job that is currently up in the air with the Orioles? Could he be a potential fit? Do we have thoughts? Eli?
I have no interest whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been outright bad the last couple of years. So yeah, no interest.
What I'll say is,
there we go.
No. So what I'm saying is, so the Orioles, I agree with Eli, should not be interested in him. But like, honestly, I'm not being sarcastic when I say this. Completely unrelated to the Bautista punch. I have liked Rougned Odor for a long time. I used to love how he played. He was like a great second baseman.
And then he got bad at baseball.
I'm sorry?
Then he got bad at baseball.
I just said, then he got bad at baseball.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. But he used to be a great second baseman, like one of the elite second basemen in the league for a couple years at least. So, but unfortunately, his time seems to be up, and I don't think it would make much sense for the Orioles to pursue him.
I will make it a clean sweep and agree there. The Rangers took Charlie Culberson over Rougned Odor, and I think that should probably tell you all you need to know. Charlie Culberson's not very good. So the fact that they took him over Odor and they owe Odor a bunch of money, I think I'd rather have Pat Valleca or Ramon Urias at second base. Another former Oriole, Renato Nunez, who was in camp with the Tigers on a minor league deal or a spring training invite, has not made the opening day roster for the Tigers. Jesse, you're kind of a Tigers fan, sort of. What do you think about? Eli, maybe you have a similar fanhood there, but I know Jesse's always liked the Tigers a little bit. What do you think about former Oriole Nunez not making their lineup?
Well, what I would say is, for a long time, when the Orioles were not making the playoffs, I would need a team to pull for in the playoffs. And our dad is from Detroit, lived in Detroit, and grew up a Tigers fan. So, I'm not a huge fanatic.
I know that wasn't really I was just saying.
Right. But I, of course, when they had Miguel Cabrera, well, they still have him, but when he was really, really good, and when they had Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer and all these great players, Maglio Ordonez.
Oh yeah, Maglio.
A long time ago. So,
Curtis
they were
Granderson.
right. Exactly. Yeah, they were a really, really exciting team, and they were really good. And in my mind, it was very sad that with all that, they never won a World Series. But
now they're bad, and they are not going to keep Renato Nunez.
Right, exactly. And that does not that is a very bad indication for the trajectory of Renato Nunez's career.
Okay. Eli, do you have any thoughts on Nunez?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Miguel Cabrera on that team already filling in a first base DH role, that severely limits the potential for someone like Renato Nunez to break camp with the team. So yeah, it was never going to happen.
What about third base, Eli? He could go over
to
third.
Well, that's what I was.
I mean, they've got Jamer Candelario, who's better than Renato Nunez.
Yeah.
So I think he's been their everyday third baseman. So Renato was angling for a DH spot.
Yeah. Well, I think Nunez was playing a little third base in the spring, so that I can't think he thought his chances were very good from the beginning.
To be clear, I was joking about the third base possibility.
Yeah. Jokes are not great when you have to then explain that you were joking. All right. Elsewhere, Zach Pop, former Oriole farmhand, former part of the Dodgers trade that sent Manny Machado to Los Angeles, has made the Marlins opening day roster. Now, there is still a chance the Orioles could get him back. He does have to spend, I think, is it 90 days? It's 60 days, I think, on the 26-man roster before he is no longer able to be sent back to the Orioles. But, I think just the Zach Pop situation in general, how are we feeling? Is this sort of a blemish on Mike Elias's record as the Orioles decision maker? Jesse, maybe I'll go to you first on the Zach Pop situation. How are you feeling about this? And is it sort of a black mark on Elias to this point?
I think definitely it is. The Orioles could have made room on the 40-man roster for him to be there and to be protected. And I think it would have made sense given this stage of his career. And what I would say, I think it's actually unlikely that we're going to get him back. I think there's a very good chance, a much higher chance than our 2 Rule 5 draft picks that he stays long enough on the Marlins to stay in the organization. So, I think it definitely is something that it's an oversight. Of course, he's he's not going to make or break an organization, but he definitely would have been a nice piece to still have.
Yeah, Eli.
Yeah, I think the Orioles thought they could pull a fast one because he was coming off of Tommy John and everything, and I think that as soon as everybody saw that he was available, those lists that Tyler mentioned earlier, looking at potential people who could be selected, he was on every single one of them. I was pretty disappointed to see him left off. Excuse me. I think that the fastball is just electric, and this one hurts a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. He was taken right after the Orioles took Scruller in the Rule 5 draft. The Diamondbacks actually took Pop, and then he got sent to the Marlins later on. So kind of an interesting twist of fate there. I don't know. Maybe Scruller, maybe Wells ends up as a better major league pitcher than Pop. I think what you said, Eli, is right. I think they tried to sneak him through, and it doesn't seem like the wisest decision. But to Jesse's point, he's a relief pitcher. Unless he becomes Mariano Rivera, which we don't expect to happen. This is not going to be a, organizational shattering move. But yeah, I mean, we got to call out Elias when he makes a mistake. And I think he made a mistake here. I think Pop, talent-wise, is a step above Scruller and Wells. He was on the Orioles' top 30 prospects when they got him from the Dodgers. He had a really big fastball, had Tommy John. His velocity was down, and then he had Tommy John. And it looks like his velocity's back, his movement's there. And this guy's probably going to be a really effective relief pitcher for a really long time. And he'll probably end up as a closer somewhere. So it's unfortunate. And yeah, we got to call out Elias when he makes a mistake. And I think he probably muffed up here. All right. Final spring impressions. Just a couple people I wanted to call out real quick and see if you guys had any takes on. Bruce Zimmerman, who is the Orioles, going to be the number 3 starter to start the season, was roughed up in his final spring outing, lasted 4 1/3 innings, gave up 9 hits, 7 runs, 0 walks, 3 strikeouts, 3 home runs, and his spring ERA jumped from 0.00 to 4.73 in that final outing. Are we concerned about Bruce Zimmerman now off one outing, and then maybe what is your prognosis for him in the Orioles rotation moving forward? Jesse, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna get over. I'm not gonna overreact to one outing. Definitely, I'm not worried about it. So whether he stays the number 3 started the entire year, I am skeptical of that. But I'm not at all basing that on this one outing.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think that there are going to be innings limits on just about every young pitcher that the Orioles have, especially given the shortened season last year. And I think Zimmerman will not be immune to that. So I don't think that he will necessarily stick in the rotation the entire year. They'll play some games with sending him down, with moving him to the pen to lessen the number of innings that are stacking up on his arm. That being said, I'm not worried about this outing one bit.
Yeah, I think that's right. He's, we know what he is. Look, he wasn't a 0 ERA pitcher, if we're honest with ourselves. He's a guy that's a pitchability dude, needs to be perfect with his location. And when he's not, he's going to get hit around a little bit. And that's what we saw here in his final outing. And it's going to happen in the regular season too. I think if the Orioles can get him through the order one full time, that's good. And anything after that's a bonus. So, 4 or 5 innings, I think is a nice outing for Bruce Zimmerman. And we'll probably, handcuff him to one of the Rule 5 guys or Wade LeBlanc if he makes the team every time he starts. Jesse, yeah?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I will say that I feel like them giving him the number 3 spot in the rotation indicates some sort of hope that he is going to be one of the more durable guys in the rotation. So I don't think that's going to play out how they are hoping for, but I think they are kind of looking to him to be a stable, consistent force in the rotation. I think a guy that they are planning to move around and stuff like that normally would be more toward the back end. And someone like Kramer, I think is more, it seems to me is going to be more reliably a starting pitcher the entire year. So I feel like them making him the 3 starter indicates some sort of confidence that the Orioles have that he can stick there.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I think it's going to be a very fluid situation with the rotation. I don't know if we can really get too hung up on the spots in the rotation other than Means. I think Means is far and away the ace of the staff, but the rest of them I think are going to move and flow quite a bit throughout the summer. Austin Hayes ended his spring with a 391 batting average and an 1192 OPS with 4 home runs across 51 at bats. Pretty much lit the Grapefruit League on fire. So, how are we feeling about Austin Hayes? Has he kind of turned a corner here? I know these are spring stats, but he looked really good after coming back from injury last year. All the reports on him this spring are that he's figured something out. Eli, how are you feeling about Austin Hayes? Do you think he's kind of turned a corner and can kind of be that guy for the Orioles? Who knows what position he's going to play just yet, but has he sort of figured something out?
Yeah, I think so. Like you said, the spring stats by themselves are not a thing, but last year when he was healthy, he was on fire. The first year he came up when he was healthy, that last September of 2019, he was on fire. When he is all there, he performs. And yeah, I'm excited. Like you said, I'm not fully sure he'll be the everyday center fielder. I think if we're going for the best overall quality of lineup, he is. That being said, I don't think there's any harm in moving him around the corners, leaving Mullins in center, maybe having him DH a little bit, whatever happens. But I think Hayes can move around. But I think undoubtedly his bat is in the Orioles lineup close, 155 out of 162 games this year.
Okay. Jesse, you've been kind of up and down on Hayes throughout the last couple of years. How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, the Orioles and, have felt that he has turned a corner a bunch of times in the past. And then the only thing holding him back was him getting injured. So assuming he stays healthy, I think, I think he is showing what he's capable of. Obviously, like you said, Tyler, I'm not going to get super, super excited over these spring training statistics. I think it's unlikely he even hits over, I don't know, 300 this year. Not that people should really be expecting that, but yeah, but I do agree that I think he will be a consistent player. And I do think the Orioles will be able to rely on him for at least a few years. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Nolan Reimold all over again with this. If he's healthy, he's going to be really good. Reimold, had really good seasons or I wouldn't say seasons, had a really good season and some good spurts, but got hurt all the time. Hayes, hopefully we're not into the same thing, but he's got to put together one full good season before we can even kind of put him in the Reimold bracket. But yeah, I mean, whenever he's healthy, he's really, really good. And he was a guy that got drafted out of Jacksonville and started really hot, was the first guy from his draft to play in the major leagues because he tore up the minors. He's clearly got physical ability. He just needs to stay on the field and be healthy when he's on the field. So I'm going to buy into the Austin Hayes hype, and I'm getting pretty excited about the Orioles' top 4 hitters in the order. I mean, it's going to be some combination most days, I think, of Hayes, Mountcastle, Mancini, and Santander, and that's a pretty good foursome. I'm not sure it's top 10, top 5 necessarily, but it's a pretty good group of guys that's going to, produce a lot of runs. So I'm looking forward to it. Okay. Michael Franco, last time we talked, he was coming off a game in which he had a monster home run. He was giving quotes saying that he's ready for the season, doesn't want to start at the alternate camp. He's since really struggled. Altogether, he's 3 for 19 with 6 strikeouts this spring. There's been some, not with him, but there's been injuries around the roster that it looks like Franco's probably going to make the opening day roster, despite having a clause in his contract that says he can start at the alternate site, despite not having any options, obviously. But what do you guys think about Franco? Do you think it makes sense? What makes more sense? Should he start the season at that alternate camp, keep working out some kinks that clearly seem to exist, or, he's a veteran, let's just get him in the big leagues and get going? Jesse, your thoughts?
I mean, again, this is a decision that I think is very inconsequential. But yeah, I mean, I guess if I had to pick one way or the other, I would say let's just have him on the major league team. It's better that, I don't know, he's around the guys the first couple weeks of the season, kind of gets accustomed and familiar with playing. So again, like, I don't think it's a big deal either way, but yeah, why not have him on the team to start the season? If he struggles the first couple weeks, definitely not the end of the world.
Okay.
Fully in agreement. Yeah, especially with Sanchez being off the roster, we now have a new slot for an infielder. So throw him on there. Why not?
Yeah, it does feel like all of a sudden we kind of have a one missing infielder if we were to not carry both of them, both Rio Ruiz and Franco, that is. So I think, yeah, he starts the year and probably is now going to be the opening day third baseman, given that we're going to be – well, no, I think Nathan Eovaldi's actually starting on the mound for the Red Sox on opening day now. So our whole prediction they're all out the window at this point. We did them 2 weeks ago, and it's all different now. But, yeah, I think Franco starts the season in the big leagues. Okay, so what else we got? Oh, yeah, we want to do predictions real quick. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but win-loss predictions. The Orioles' PECOTA projection this year is 67.5 wins. So who wants to go first? Who has a win total they want to put forth as the Orioles 21 total?
I'm going just under. I'm taking the under at 67 wins.
Wow, okay.
It just feels right.
And that would put them last in the AL East, right?
It would.
Okay.
I was going to say a little bit worse. I was going to say 64. I think it's definitely in the ballpark. I think, yeah, I was just going to say, I think the Orioles are going to barely avoid 100 losses, but just barely. And yeah, I'm guessing 64 wins.
Okay, I'm in the same ballpark. I think the Orioles, if the offense is really, really good, could could flirt with that 70 win mark. But the starting pitching, I think, is going to be so bad that I'm going to say 65 wins. So in Price is Right, I'm in trouble here because I need to really hit it. Because anything over 67, Eli wins. Anything 64 under, Jesse wins. But I'm going to still say 65. So that's what we're going to go with. And all of us have them finishing in the basement of the AL East. Because while I do think the Red Sox are going to be bad this year, they're not. I don't think they're going to flirt with 100 losses.
Definitely.
But if you had to give the Orioles a percentage chance of making the playoffs, is it above 0%? You can be honest, because there's outlets that it's not above 0.
If we were in the NL Central, maybe we could push it to like a 3% chance, but in the AL East, 0. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, the pitching is just so bad that I hope they surprise me. I hope Matt Harvey is back to Cy Young form. John Means looks like an all-star, and Dean Kramer competes for Rookie of the Year, but I don't think that's likely. So I think, the 0% chance is fair. Okay, if you were going to go ahead.
One sec, sorry. I was just going to say that, I definitely think like in between 55 and 70 wins is, I think, definitively like where the Orioles are going to end up, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I'd have to look on the PECOTA rankings. They do give like a parabola. No, maybe that's not the word, not a parabola, but like a probability, like a standard deviation one way and the other of where they're. What's that?
Bell curve.
Bell curve. Yeah, that sounds good. And they do have some chance towards the very unlikely end to be above 500. So that's Baseball Prospectus. It's not, it's less than 5% chance, I think, to be above 500, but just throwing that out there.
I'm not even hoping for that,
You're not hoping for it? You don't want them to be
in terms of like, it's not even in my mindset likely. As to, I'm not even like considering that as like a potential possibility that we're 500. So I'm not even like hoping for 500. Like, obviously it would be great if we were 500, but it's so out of line with reality. I feel like that, there's no way.
Fair enough. Okay, who was your pick for most valuable Oriole this season? Eli, do we want to go? Santander. Okay. Wow. Jesse?
Yeah, I think he's going to repeat.
Wow. I'm going to say Ryan Mountcastle. Big Mountcastle guy over here. I'm going to give it to him. Okay. Will any Oriole, including the manager, win a major award? Now, this is not just MVP, Cy Young, but there's Rookie of the Year, Manager of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, which the Orioles have a very good candidate for. So Eli, what do you think? Any Orioles going to win a major award this year?
I got Trey Mancini as Comeback Player of the Year, and I will follow that up with, if he doesn't win, I think Shohei Ohtani wins.
That's a good pick too.
Yeah.
Okay. Jesse?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think the Orioles are going to win a major award, but
wow.
I don't see it happening.
Not even All-Star Game MVP?
No.
I don't know if that's a major
definitely not that one. Yeah, definitely not that one.
Just out of curiosity, do you even like the Orioles?
Of course I like the Orioles.
He's a Tigers fan.
Yeah, right.
Look, I'm going to say, Trey Mancini, that's the easy one. I'm going to say he wins Comeback Player of the Year, and I'm going to say Ryan Mountcastle wins Rookie of the Year. Let's do it. Who else is up for Rookie of the Year this year?
I got to just say, if we had kept Sanchez, maybe we could have argued that he would have won a Gold Glove. But
Santander got nominated last year.
Yeah.
I bet you Mullins gets a little pub for center field because he played a good center field last year. I don't think he'll win it, but I could see them being some chatter.
So, Tyler, real quick, I just looked it up. Mountcastle is currently 4th in the Vegas odds to win. Randy Arozarena from Tampa Bay, Jared Kelenic from Seattle, and number 1 prospect in baseball, Wander Franco, are all ahead of him.
But Franco did get optioned, so
he did.
Mountcastle will be up.
That's definitely service time manipulation.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so he'll be up in a month or so.
Andrew Vaughn is another interesting one with the White Sox.
Yeah, that's right. They did select his contract, so he'll be there the whole year.
Yeah, because Eloy Jimenez is out, so they're gonna have him in left field a bunch. So that's a tough one. But I'm sticking with my boy. Mountcastle was good last year. I've been on him since they drafted him. I'm going with Mountcastle. Okay, which Oriole, singular, or Orioles, plural, will represent the Orioles at the All-Star game? This is not always the best player on the team, so this can be a complicated question. Any thoughts here, Jess?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I feel like one of our bullpen guys is going to sneak onto the team. I feel like my guess is Tanner Scott.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
That's who I'm saying.
And just one guy, not going to be multiple guys.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, he's like you were saying, he's probably not going to be our best player. Like overall, I would say. But making it as an all-star in the outfield is much harder than being an all-star as a reliever. So, yeah, there are a lot of good outfielders, and that's tough to crack.
Okay, because you think your second pick would be what, Santander? Is that why you're saying outfield?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Eli?
I think Santander's numbers will be a little better. That being said, I think Trey Mancini is our all-star. I think that the story gets him points. I think that the 2019 snub gets him some points. And I think, and like, don't get me wrong, he's the guy that I want to see there too. I think Trey Mancini is the one. And I think Tanner Scott is definitely a good dark horse.
Yeah, I think I've got some movement behind me in the studio here. My wife has entered the chat. But yeah, I think Mancini's a good one because he was on the Today Show today. Like, he's becoming more of a household name. And it's because, one, he's a really good player, but two, the story is really good. That said, it's tough. I think the Orioles are going to be pretty bad record-wise, and a lot of that gets drowned out, by performance on the field. So Tanner Scott was going to be my pick too. So I'll say two guys make it. I'll say Scott makes it, and Mancini both make it.
See, but my thing about that is that if Mancini makes it, then I don't think Scott's going to make it. I think Scott will make it because the Orioles need a representative. And like, I don't see a scenario in which they both make it. That doesn't make sense.
I think Scott has the potential to become one of those guys that's on highlight reels. He's on Pitching Ninja. He's on all that stuff that he throws 100 miles an hour in the slider, and he's got the numbers, and he becomes like a Josh Hader type that people like are like, whoa, this dude's like otherworldly. And I'm just trying to be different, Jesse. If we all say the same thing, it's boring.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense, I guess. But yeah. And the other thing I was going to say, I mean, I just think Mancini and what his performance is going to be like this year is a question mark. So that's why I think the points you mentioned earlier about how he should have made it previously, I think those are all very valid points. Plus the cancer, I think gives him some advantages that other players don't have. But in terms of just like what his performance is going to be like this year, I think is a big question mark. So we'll have to see.
Yeah. And it's tough. There's going to probably be two first basemen on the AL roster, and Jose Abreu just won MVP at first base for the White Sox, who are a really exciting young team. So it's tough. It's tough. Okay. So if you're looking back, if it's October and you're looking back at the Orioles season, what has to have happened with the Orioles for you to consider 2021 a success? Does it have to be they reached a certain win total? Does it have to be a certain player performed a certain way? Did we get to see Adley Rutschman in the big leagues? Is there any sort of outcome you're really looking to achieve or looking for the Orioles to achieve in 2021 for you to consider it a successful season? Jesse?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we've had similar questions in the past, like for previous years. And yeah. I feel like the answer is going to be the exact same. I think the win total is not going to mean anything. I think the only thing that I'm really interested in, I guess I would say I want good defense, or at least sufficient defense, making the regular plays. But then I'm obviously looking for growth in, the key players that we're evaluating, the key young players. Make sure they stay healthy, make sure that they get they're put in positive situations where they are allowed to perform at their best and maximize their abilities. And yeah, I mean, and definitely, of course, to whatever extent we're looking for, is information. And we're going to try to find out a little bit more about some of these guys, about guys like Austin Hayes, about guys like Cedric Mullins, et cetera. So, yeah, I mean, I think those are the main objectives. And I think if the Orioles win 30 games this year, that it would be possible for, in my mind, to have a quote unquote successful season. Even though it's unlikely, I would say, because if we win 30 games, then the young guys that, I'm hoping for to do well probably didn't do very well, but you get the point.
Gotcha. Okay. Eli, you were about to jump in there.
Yeah. I was about to jump in because my screen froze and I didn't know what happened to you guys. So I said, ooh. So if you hear that, that is exactly what happened to the listeners. But yeah, so for me, like a success, I've kind of just picked one thing for each major area. For the starting rotation, I want to get starts out of Zimmerman, Kramer, Aiken, and Bauman. And I think eventually I want to get 5 starts out of each of them. I think eventually the Orioles will go to a 6-man rotation to manage inning counts, to lighten workloads on those guys' arms. But I just want to see them, and I want them to have a little bit of success. I want the bullpen to do exactly what it did last year. I think that there was a lot of promising stuff shown last year. Tanner Scott definitely leading the way. And if Max Roller and Tyler Wells can be a part of that, I'm all for it. And then, kind of like Tyler alluded to earlier, those first 4 in the lineup, the Hayes, Santander, Mancini, and Mountcastle, those 4, I think, really can turn into something pretty formidable. And I think the success of the Orioles 2021 season is largely dependent on how they come together as a unit and can, take on Major League pitching.
Yeah, I think those are good. I focus on the pitching in my sort of what I view as success. I really care about Kramer, Aiken, Lothar, Bauman, Alex Wells, Tyler Wells, Scruller. You can throw the Rule 5 guys in there, but to a lesser extent. I really just want to see, I want to know at the end of the 2021 season what we're kind of looking like moving forward, because we're not going to see DL Hall this year. We're not going to see Grayson Rodriguez this year, but I really want to know what the other guys are. I think you're hoping that Hall and Rodriguez are the front of the rotation moving forward, and potentially in addition to a college starter they may draft this year, which it looks likely. The draft this year is set up very well to get a good college pitcher at that number 5 spot. So I think potentially that guy plus Hall and Rodriguez is your front of the rotation, but I want to know what we've got in the other guys in the organization that are going to support those 3 moving forward. And right now, I'm not sure what we've got. I think John Means could be a guy that's around for a long time. Kramer and Aiken, the questions are still out there, and we know next to nothing at the major league level about anybody else in the organization that could stick around for a long time. So I'm really looking to learn a lot about the pitching staff by the end of the year. I think it's good, Eli, to have like the 5-start goal in mind. That's something tangible that I think is possible, that if you get them up here, August sometime, I think 5 starts is reasonable. So yeah, that's what I'm looking to get out of it.
One note on the college arm that you mentioned, a pretty likely possibility. I've been starting to do some Googling. This dude, Jaden Hill out of LSU, he's phenomenal. Like Pitching Ninja says, he's got the best changeup in the game. There's a pretty good chance that we could snag him at 5, and he can light it up at like 98 as well.
Yeah, I mean,
I just want to throw that out there.
That would be very Orioles to not get, Kumar Rocker or Jack Leiter, like the 2 Vanderbilt guys that are kind of all over social media, but to get a guy that is still really talented and been talked a bunch. I was reading about him earlier, and I think he had some injury stuff very early in his college career. And then last year, obviously, was a wash with the Corona stuff. So yeah, that sounds good to me. I'll definitely keep reading about it. And I know there's a couple high school hitters up high and a couple of college pitchers. So we'll see what Elias does. He hasn't drafted a pitcher that high just yet. So we'll see what he does. Okay. Anything else to talk about the 2021 Orioles predictions? Any bold predictions you guys want to make before we wrap things up? We don't have to do that. I just was throwing it out there.
I think that Austin Hayes is a 3.5 win player. 3.5 WAR by
Wow.
the end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a big prediction. Jesse, do you have anything to match
It's a
that?
big
You don't
jump.
have to.
I don't. Yeah. No, I'm not sure. I did not prepare for that, so I don't
That's
have
okay.
a bold prediction. Yeah.
That is okay. Before we wrap up, we just want to real quick acknowledge that former Orioles closer Greg Olson announced today. Greg Olson, I'm apologizing. Let me say this again real quick, and I'll edit it out. Real quick before we get out of here, we do want to mention that former Orioles closer Greg Olson announced today that he's been diagnosed with prostate cancer. So we just want to send our thoughts to Greg and his family and wish the former Orioles great good luck in his fight against cancer. You got all of Birdland behind you, and we've shown we can support a guy battling cancer. So good luck, Greg, and we'll be hoping that you recover well. Okay, so what we would like you guys to do is subscribe and rate us 5 stars on your preferred podcasting platform, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else you may go. You can visit us on Substack at thewarehousepod.substack.com. There you can sign up with your email address and you will get podcasts sent to your email inbox, as well as any written content and newsletters we may produce. So please do that. You can also email the show directly, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. You can follow us on our various socials. They're just exploding in popularity at the moment on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at The Warehouse Pod. We do post a video version of the podcast every week on YouTube, so check that out. And you can go over to our Twitch at The Warehouse Pod on Twitch, where we're hoping to do sporadic live streams throughout the season. That's not confirmed just yet, but if you go give us a follow there, you'll be alerted whenever we go live or do anything cool over there. Some things we've got maybe planned are to do some watch-alongs during the game or some baseball card openings and any other fun stuff. Might be one of us, might be all 3 of us. We'll see. And Jesse, where can people find you on social media?
People can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at Juggernaut8678.
And Eli?
I'm on Instagram at Ginsey55 and on Twitter at Elijah Ginsberg.
Nice. And I am on Twitter and Instagram at _Ty Young and at CamdenChat.com. We also want to remind you to check out Birdland tonight. You can follow them at Birdland Sports on all the social media, where they'll be streaming post-game shows throughout the regular season. And then one final thing we do want to mention is we are going to add a couple segments to the show this year. One is going to be called Guess That Oriole, where what we're going to do, and we're not doing it this week, but we will start it next week, is we will give you 3 facts about a current or former Oriole. And we will then post those deets on our social. So follow us there if you don't always listen to the podcast. And you need to guess the Oriole. And if you do, maybe we'll have a special prize for you, or we'll just say thanks or something. We'll announce it on the following week's podcast. And should be pretty fun. So get involved there. If you've got any Orioles you want us to feature, reach out to us on social or via email. And then we will also be doing a segment called Silver Lining of the Week, where we will pick out something because, we think the Orioles are going to be pretty bad this year. As we just said, we think they're going to get near 100 losses. So each week we will put a silver lining to it and mention a stat or an occurrence or something we thought was worth watching, even though the Orioles are pretty terrible. So look forward to that as well. And again, if you have suggestions on that, reach out to us on social or via email. It's thewarehousepod@gmail.com and at thewarehousepod on all the various social stuff. Come back next week where we'll be recapping the Orioles' first week of the season. They've got a series against the Red Sox and a series against the Yankees on the road. We will give our initial impressions of the season, and we will prepare for the home opener against the Boston Red Sox. All right, guys, anything else to add before we skedaddle? Cool. Well, you have been listening. Oh, Eli says go Birds. You have been listening to the Warehouse Podcast. Until next week, I'm Tyler.
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Eli.
Thanks for listening.